Do you have a story to share with the world? Of course you do. We all have stories to share. An Anchor podcast allows you to share your interests in a way that connects to others all across the globe. If you have been considering starting your own podcast and don't know where to begin, Anchor makes it easy to record, edit, and publish with the click of a button. You can even add music. Whether it's crime dramas, self-improvement, paranormal adventures, or tips about parenting, you too can share your unique imprint on the world. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. You've got this. I believe in you. Welcome to the Existential Empath Podcast. My name is Tanya, and I am an intuitive empath. My intention is to share valuable tools and techniques that I have learned so you can tap into your own inner healer naturally and intuitively. Does it look like it is on your side?
Yes.
Okay, good. Because I do upload this to my YouTube, and then I have the podcast too for the audio part.
Okay.
Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to just take a deep breath and just center ourselves. And this is going to be a great one. All right. Welcome back, everyone. So today we have a very exciting topic to talk about. We are going to dive into awakening to your multidimensionality. And what does that mean? What does multidimensionality mean? So today I have a guest with me. Her name is Kara Goodwin. Kara is a certified meditation teacher, a coach, a Reiki master, and she is the host of the Meditation Conversation podcast. Welcome, Kara. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Yes. And so, when you reached out to me, I thought, we could talk about meditation. We could talk about these things. But then I saw that you had a story about awakening to your multidimensionality. And I thought, that's the topic. That's what we need to talk about today. So, we are all multidimensional, right? We are quantum. We are souls that exist across all dimensions, all timelines, all vibrations, all frequencies. And I think when I think of multidimensionality, I think of, we're mind, body, emotion, spirit, and energy. And we're a little bit of that. We're the divine masculine and the divine feminine, right? We're the light and we're the dark. And we are all one, but yet we're all individuals. So what does multidimensionality mean to you? I mean, that's just kind of my understanding of what it means.
Yes. Well, I love that. I love how you bring like the earthiness to it in terms of, because it's very, the word that's coming is approachable, and that's not what I mean. It's very like relatable, because it is like we've got more than these bodies, and you can easily think about it in terms of we have emotions and we have all of these different expressions of who we are. When I speak of multidimensional experiences, the way that it happens for me is more of a like experiencing things that are beyond the physical plane. So beyond the 3D experience that we're used to, where we know what form looks like here. We know what our physical limitations are. We know that, we know about gravity. We know about, all of the things that we just don't even think about being here on this planet. I have had some rather spontaneous experiences where I think I'm going to go to sleep at night, and I lay down to go to sleep, and I start seeing and experiencing. It always starts with color. And the color begins to organize into shapes. So there's usually like a geometric element. Usually it starts by like almost looking like tiles, like a mosaic-y kind of, or like it always reminds me of a mosque. But what's funny is I don't know that I've ever even been in a mosque, but like the dome, like how there's that dome.
I think when I see it, it's like a kaleidoscope almost is the way that I explain it. Mm-hmm.
There is a kaleidoscope element to it as well, where it looks like these fractals that are reflecting, and changing. So that can be part of it too, but there almost always is where I'm like, I'm in a dome and it's like a repeating pattern of like, maybe like almost like a skinny triangle with rounded, that's one that I see a lot. But anyway, basically it's like these visuals just start to organize, and it just feels like you're in a place, like a domed place or whatever. And it's and not, for me, a lot of times I don't see form, like I don't see beings there, but I'll see like shapes and geometries and colors. And then lifting up, there's like a continuous like lifting where then I start to experience different things. So I can lift up, and it depends. It's never like, it's not like always the same, but some of the places are familiar. Like some of them I've experienced, multiple times, but usually it's kind of like if I keep lifting, then I'll get to a place that's like space. It's just like there isn't like color, but it's kind of like a void type of thing, or it feels like an outer space type of thing. And what's funny is that this happens not all the time, but enough that like sometimes I just fall asleep. I'll get to a certain point and then I'll fall asleep, because that's when it happens for me. Even though I love to meditate, it doesn't usually happen when I'm meditating. It happens more in that like transition into sleep. So sometimes I'm fortunate enough that I can remember, and there's usually a process of me like trying to bring the memory into my human form, where I'm like, okay, kind of like almost like sending it to myself to be like, hey, remember this, remember, and sometimes I can, and sometimes I can't. Sometimes I can only remember that something started and I'm like, I think there was color, but I can't access it, the next day. So I've had different experiences, and then usually there's some sort of knowing that comes with it. Sometimes it's just an experience. I mean, just an experience. It's a beautiful experience, but there's not necessarily like a takeaway from it. And again, it's not like there's somebody there telling me something where I'm like, oh, and then I saw this man who had like flowing robes, and he said to me, It's not like that for me. But sometimes like I will see symbols of things, and I'll see like and a lot of times it's with light and geometry. And then I just understand, oh, this is a representation of something, and there might be things around about the chakra system. And I've had that where I've had different vibrations in my chakra system, and then understandings of like the elements and how they interact and the colors and all of that. And I've had a few different times where I have I've experienced that I have information that I'm storing like in my body. So, we often think that everything originates from the brain, or that we have memories in our brain, but I've experienced that like, oh, when I think of this person, it actually subtly, like without my realizing it, activates like my arm right here. And I can't like feel it during the day, but I can feel it in that state where I'm like, oh, every time I access that person, I go like my consciousness goes to retrieve the information or to connect with it like here. And then I might have somebody else that is in, my abdomen or whatever. And I'm like, that is so weird. Like, why does my awareness go to my rib cage?
I've had that too. And I think being highly empathic or intuitive, I'll have that too. It's like, I'll be planning to connect with someone maybe the next day, and then I'll feel a sensation in my body associated with that. And then the next day, the person is like, oh, I've been having this pain in my right shoulder. And I'm like, I was picking up on that yesterday. And, so I think it's like we're all connected, but we're also all very uniquely individual as well. And I think, when I experience those multidimensionality, sometimes I get the colors, I get the sacred geometry, but sometimes I do get physical beings. I get, I'll have maybe a galactic version of myself, or a past life version of myself, or an ancestral looking version of myself appear. But like you said, you have this knowing. In my knowing, I know that's me. It's like, okay, I may see this Native American woman from back in the early, 1500s. I don't know, but I know deep down in my soul that that's a version of me, and that this spirit guide that's coming forward is actually a version or an aspect of myself that's bringing forward a message or information to me. And I think once I began to recognize that my guides, so to speak, are actually aspects of myself or versions of myself in other frequencies, other timelines, other realities, then I wasn't as fearful when they would come through, because I think in the beginning I was a little scared when I was getting all of these impressions, coming through. But then I realized that these are just me. Okay, if it's all just me, it's just me in a different frequency, I can process that a little bit more here in the third dimension, having a better understanding of that. And I do too, see the shapes and the colors, and I associate that. And I think that's our subconscious's way of kind of piecing together all of the puzzle, and so yeah. And I know so you're a meditation teacher and coach. So how do you teach people how to tap into or awaken these multidimensional aspects of yourself?
That's such a great question. And I really don't actively teach getting to that state. For one thing, I feel that I'm not the right person right now to be able to say, like, oh, here's how you do it. Like, I have not unlocked how I do it. There are things, I feel like the pathways are getting stronger to where I can get places a little bit easier, but I can't do it on demand. I can like ask and set the intention and kind of try to set the stage for it. And there's a spontaneity about it. And I also don't want people to think that that's the end goal.
Absolutely.
Because I think it's a step on the path, or maybe it's a reflection of what you need at that time, and you're open enough to be able to receive it in a certain way. But I don't want people to feel like, either, well, I must not be spiritual enough. Absolutely. I must not be doing it right because I don't have these experiences. That can be really deflating, and it's not true. You can be like doing everything that is the right thing for your journey, and this just not be showing up at this time. And that's purposeful. And two, I want people to tap into more about what is it that you actually want? Is it that you want a multidimensional experience, in which case there are psychedelics, there are, it's like, it's not like there are some kind of shortcuts, I guess, to kind of allow yourself to have that experience. And you want to be careful. I don't want to say that like just, hey, go, take shrooms or whatever, you want to carefully weigh that decision and be careful with it. But for me, it's like this remembrance of what is the purpose, like what do I really want? And it is to open myself as much as possible to the divine flow and let that be moving through me at such a rate that it is, flowing out of me and affecting everybody that I come in contact with, as much as possible, to kind of be that ray of light here, and along with so many rays of lights that are here. But it's kind of like, I don't want people to, because I think that's more important. I think like having that purposeful, let me like open myself up to the greatest version of myself that I can be, is much more important. And then that will shape itself into a myriad of different possibilities and outcomes, which may or may not be these kinds of experiences. And so really, it's one of the purposes, one of the things, or my approach is just to sort of set the stage for people who are ready to talk about, like, these are potentially things that happen, because things are happening very, very rapidly right now. And I know this.
Yes.
We're in like a very fertile time for people to be waking up, and people are waking up, and it happens different ways for different people. But as I know, for me, I've had a mentor I've been very, very blessed to have an amazing mentor who has kind of set the stage for me enough that as things started happening, I was like, oh my God, this is what he was talking about, and then I have my own version of it where I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, but having had that exposure from him has really helped. It's been invaluable to just help me be curious about it and excited about it.
And not fearful about it, right?
Exactly. So that's another thing of just like sprinkling things. And I'm opening up more and more about it as time goes on, because I feel that it's important that people know, and more people, I think, can relate or will be relating very soon.
Absolutely, Kara. And I feel that too, because when I didn't even really realize how many people are afraid of meditation. When I first started, it was basically for me to just relax. I was trying to calm my central nervous system because it was just firing on all fuses. And so, but I didn't even realize that once I started to do it regularly, the experiences that I would begin to have. And in the beginning, I was a little fearful, because when I first started, I would see in my mind's eye a huge eyeball staring back at me, and I didn't know what that was. And it was scary. It kind of scared me because it was very intense, the colors around it, and it would blink at me. But now I'm recognizing, when I see that eyeball, it's my higher self. That's just my kind of perception of what it is. It's this beautiful higher being of myself that's looking back, kind of at me like a reflection. But when I first started seeing that, it was like, who's looking at me? It was just a little scary. So yeah, I think it's important to talk about those things, that, meditation, once you begin to access these frequencies, through this deep state of calmness, right? You start to activate your chakras. And as we do that, we open up different experiences. And I'm always a fan of setting an intention before I sit down. And I don't know if you teach that or not, but I like doing that. Now, also too, I don't, it's like, if you're like, I really, really want a multidimensional experience, and so every time I meditate, I'm really focusing on it, which I think also causes resistance a little bit if you're really, really gripping very tightly on it, versus just going with the flow and allowing yourself and just setting a soft intention that, hey, this is where I want to go. But what are your thoughts on that, and setting intentions prior to meditation?
I love that. I do it also before I fall asleep. I think for me, I don't even know that I would call it intentions, but it's the same spirit, which is, and for me, it's a protective bubble. So not in, and I, it's not that we need to be afraid, but also, in the multidimensional reality,
astral realm,
it's not all light. And if you are like opening yourself up, you're getting into an acceptance state. You want to be mindful about who's invited to the party.
Yes.
So, it's like, that is an intentional thing. And I do that with my students as well. Like, put a bubble, of golden or white light around you. And then, calling in my team,
Uh-huh.
which is different aspects of myself, or however we want to think about it, but angelics and ascended masters and benevolent star family and so forth. And so for me, that's really that's kind of where my intentions go. And then I sort of, the rest of my meditation usually is pretty, like just feeling into what's happening. But at night, I do tend to be pretty intentional about, protection and, calling in my team, and that
Uh-huh.
I would like to, interact with my team, and, whether that be in the dream state or however it expresses itself. Um, yeah. So I do love the practice of, and just the general, not even so much a formal practice, but just being intentional, about
Yeah.
what it is that you're wanting to call forth. It's really important.
It really is. And I love that you emphasize it on the dream time, because we are in the astral realm when we are in the dream state. And the astral realm, like you said, you can bring anybody to the party, but if you're not setting the intention or guiding who the frequency, I guess, when you're getting ready to sleep and get into that theta state, you want to be in a frequency that is, the frequency that you're choosing to be in. Right. And so I work a lot with the clients in the theta state, that brainwave state, right when you're first waking up and right when you're first going to sleep. And so those are very healing states. And, if you are going to bed anxious or mad or frustrated, and they say that for a reason, don't go to bed angry, but a lot of it is because you're holding a frequency, and that frequency, as you begin to move into that theta, is then also going to play itself out into your dream world. And so I think just having that 5 minutes prior to falling asleep and just really setting that, that goal or that intention or whatever you want to call it, to be able to hold that frequency and then move into your dream state. And you will, if you start to practice that, which I do, I use crystals too. I sleep with a lot of them under my pillow, but I also set that intention before I go to bed. And I often have beautiful dreams and beautiful experiences. And there was a time, though, in my past where I would have nightmares a lot. And I think a lot of it played into my nervous system and where I was at that time. And so I feel like, I don't know if you can call the dream world a meditation state or not. I don't know. I've never really thought about it that way before.
Well, I like how you're talking about the theta state, because I think that the theta state is an important part of my experiences of tapping into multidimensionality. And one of the things that you talk about when you're talking about being in the astral plane with dreams, it brings to mind something that I have experienced a few times, where I've talked about that rising. You rise up and then there's like a different sort of realm, or however you want to think of it, but the experience changes, and it's like, oh, now I can see like these, octagonal passageways or whatever. But there have been a few times where I have been like, let's just, for the sake of illustration, let's say I'm here, and then I can tell that I'm starting to drift off, and I notice what's happening is that I'm coming back down, but it's almost like putting like sheets, like dust sheets over couches or over anything that's stationary. It's like the symbols, the geometries, like whatever it is that I'm seeing that's like geometric or more like golden lines or whatever. It's like form starts draping over it. And it's like, oh, what was happening in that plane, now a screen is coming up.
That's really cool.
and it's like, oh, this is so now I'm starting to dream, because I'm putting form over the top of what I was seeing. And if I catch myself, then I'm like, no, I'm falling asleep, and I can like lift myself back up. But it always kind of makes me laugh, because I'm like, oh, it gives me this sense of like, okay, this is not only like, it's clear to me that that's how dreams are formed, which where we're having experiences in other places. And then there's a part of us that puts form on top of it, because that's how our human mind can relate to it. So it's this, I see it, or at least, at this point, this is how I interpret it, is that we are doing work in other dimensions with our consciousness. And then, but in order to interpret it, that's how we do it. We put form on top of these more base level, foundational geometric things.
It's like a matrix within a matrix within a matrix within. It reminds me of that movie Inception with Leonardo DiCaprio. I don't know if you've seen that. It's like a dream within a dream within a dream, and then you're like, well, what dream am I in? But it's infinite,
Yes, exactly, right. And it's also, I have a theory, and I think that I think that this is like a belief with other people as well, but that like geometry is part of the makeup of the physical world. Like within physical form in this world, it's comprised of geometries and
fractals. Yeah.
And fractals. Yes.
Exactly. As I look at that beautiful image behind your head, that I keep looking at that whenever you say geometry.
Yeah. But I've and I think you kind of indicated a similar thing where it's like with the kaleidoscope, it's like all these geometric shapes, but they've been spliced and then they're being reflected. And then it's got that mandala kind of look to it, but not flat. But it's like all these geometries that are like spliced and repeated and
and it's like, and if you apply that to us, how a kaleidoscope, it just keeps changing and shifting, just all these different shapes. And that's how we are too, right? So it's like we have this ability to shape and shift our reality and our timelines and where we want to be, and through our thoughts, through our emotions, and how we can tap into that. And we don't have to be this linear being, or this we're in the third dimension, but we have these capabilities to shift our external reality, similar to a kaleidoscope, and it's I know that's a vast, kind of thought, but we do have the capabilities of doing that. And that's where our multidimensionality comes into play. I know I started, it was probably about 4 or 5 months ago, I started to really set the intention to anchor into my highest vibrational timeline. I was just really setting that very strongly. And I had my birthday back in March, and literally the next day when I woke up, I felt like a new person. I felt like almost like a higher version of myself stepped into my body, and my friends noticed it. They were like, you seem different. You seem more confident. You seem more serious. You seem more driven. You seem more. And I'm like, I don't know what happened, but I feel like another higher frequency aspect of myself stepped into my avatar, so to speak, and ever since then, I have felt different. I'm still there. I'm still the same person, but I feel a different version of myself. And I start to, I kind of meditated on this a little bit, and, to see, I've done this throughout certain stages in my life. And, and then I thought, maybe this is what we categorize as an existential crisis, or an awakening, or a midlife crisis, is when we have another aspect of ourself, another multidimensional aspect of ourselves step in and say, okay, move over. I'm taking the wheel right now. It's, I don't know. That's just my experience. And I really recognized it was like, did I make a soul contract that on this day, on this, when I turn this age, that I'm going to make a shift in myself? And that's when I started this podcast. And that's when I just really started to feel this very strong need or urge to start sharing information out in the world, and bringing on guests and sharing different perspectives. And so I think, for me, that's kind of my story. And I've recognized that through different stages of my life. And so I don't know, do you ever notice anything like that? Have you experienced anything like that before?
Yeah, absolutely. I think of it also. I mean, I like the way you put it, where it's like you're still there, and maybe more has come in. I was doing a healing session a couple of weeks ago, And the person that I was working on, I just had this sense at a point where she was like flickering, like in and out, in and out,
Uh-huh.
in and out. And the interpretation that I had, I mean, I shared just like the sensation with her, but it was like she is ready to expand. So like, like her world, her sphere, her, soul sphere or her energy sphere is
Merkaba, yeah.
here. And then there's another, because we can keep expanding, keep expanding.
Yeah.
It's not like we've arrived. It's not ever that, oh, we
We're done.
arrived. Now we're
Yeah.
done. Yeah. It's like, no, you just can keep expanding. So
Taking
it
on
was
more
like,
light. Yeah.
yeah. So it was kind of like she was expanding and then coming back to to her baseline. And then she was expanding and coming back to baseline. And I just had this sense that she was in this process of kind of like stretching and coming back and stretching and
That's
coming
really
back. And I was like, but I think you're about to birth into that next
funny you said
level.
birth, because when you were saying stretching, expanding, I was thinking of a pregnant woman, like stretching and expanding. So
Yeah,
that's why you said
exactly.
birth.
Exactly. Because that's how it was feeling. It was like you're ready to kind of hold this higher frequency, if you want to think of it that way, that you expand into a higher frequency. It was
Yeah.
like she was getting ready to be able to hold that. But in the meantime, she kind of had to, like, she
Work her
couldn't.
way up to it a little bit.
Right. And I think that is how it happens for a lot of people, which I think is a more secure way to do that rather than like, boom, there you go
Here
from
we
zero
are. Yeah.
to
I mean,
100.
that's a shock to the body if you do it that way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That's really neat. I love that. I love that visual, of that. And I think that's what happens. It's like, your body's like, okay, how much can we take here? We're going to add a little bit. Okay. We've got to
Yeah.
move through some triggers. All right. Maybe some stuff's coming to the surface to be released. And then, okay, we can expand a little bit more. Okay. It's a little, and it's like the birthing process. It gets there's times when you feel good, and then there's times when you feel uncomfortable, and then you feel good again, and then you feel uncomfortable again. And I think
Yeah.
that's what we're all going through during this awakening process. As we begin to heal, we begin to move more in, to diving in to the shadow, and balancing out our light and dark, our masculine and our feminine, and, all of those beautiful aspects of each and every one of us that may be a little unbalanced, and as we
Yeah.
begin to balance, it can feel like a pressure cooker sometimes, and it may not feel good. But then there's times when you're like, oh, I feel like I integrated that. I feel so much better.
Yeah.
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 And I love that. I think that's really neat that you were able to visualize that with your client.
Yeah. And I think, I absolutely agree with like the body wanting to integrate, but the mind, your mental well-being also benefits from this patience of like expanding a bit and then, not like, I don't know. I don't want to pick on like Kundalini yoga,
Yeah.
but just as an example, like Kundalini yoga, the whole process is to have this like Kundalini awakening, and it's really working at it from a body perspective of like
Yes.
using the breath, really trying to like activate something, but you need to balance that. Like we need to be mentally ready for that too, and
Yeah.
mature. We need to be spiritually mature and ready, so that we do have balance, because yeah, it's possible to force these things to happen, but if you have that incongruency in your energy fields with the body or with your mind, it can be really damaging.
It
So
can. I
it's
love
like,
that you brought that up, because I feel like, everybody's like, I'm healing my triggers. I'm moving through energetically. I'm doing this and this and this. Well, the body is third dimensional, and it takes a little bit longer for the body to catch up. And so,
yeah,
if that's the multidimensionality of it, is the mind, the body, the soul, all the aspects. And so it's like,
right,
and I noticed that it's like, if I'm working, a lot energetically, it's like, I'm like, ooh, I'm feeling some pains in my body. It's taking my body a little bit of time. Or if I really focus on my body, energetically, I have to move through some things, and then
yeah,
emotionally. And so I love that you brought that up, because it's a holistic approach. It's a multidimensional approach
Yeah.
in how we heal. And it's like, if we're putting 100% of our effort in our physical, then these other areas are, kind of needing that. So it's like there needs to be a nice balance between all of them. And I think that's where our mastery comes into play, is when you can recognize, okay, I need to work over here a little bit more because I've been really focusing in this area. And I think that's where just listening and going inward and tuning into yourself and saying, where do I need to kind of tweak and fine tune some things a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. It's
Yeah,
all about balance,
it really
and
is.
it's so exciting. Like, it's such an exciting journey when you start to recognize that there's so much more happening underneath the surface, that what we have taken for granted as being reality is just a portion of what we are actually experiencing from a total consciousness perspective. And again, it keeps going. So you can hit a certain level of awakening, and it's still, there's more. That's why it's kind of like, I was saying something about how I was interpreting something that happened. It's like, well, what I think, like at this moment in time, how I interpret that is this
I'm
way.
here
Because
today. Tomorrow I may not be.
yeah, exactly. Because I may like find something new that resonates with it, that totally like makes me look at it from a totally different perspective, where I'm like, oh my God, that's what was happening.
Yeah.
That was hidden. Like, I didn't even see that, and then, so that happens a lot, where it's like, oh, wait, if I actually look at it from this way, then there's this, and look at that, and, so it is just, it's this, this wonder and excitement, and also, balancing that with patience and trust, trusting in the highest good, and in your own divine path, and the uniqueness of every person's journey, because it's different for all of us.
It
And
is.
this
It
is one of
is.
the things that I'm so excited to see these days more and more, is people kind of owning their own experience and their own exploration,
Mhm.
and kind of getting away from, we, for a long time, the guru model served,
Mhm.
when we were in a different vibration on this planet. That was a really important way for people to find their path. And these days, there's a lot that we gain in not being locked into what can become very dogmatic
Absolutely.
when we tie ourselves
Because
to.
that's a limited belief, right?
Yeah. And we're looking at somebody else's experience and trying to emulate somebody,
Try to fit ourselves into that experience. And I love that, Kara, because I look at it as an analogy. We all have a human body, but the finger has a different experience than the toe has a different
oh, I
experience,
love
right?
that.
So it's
Yeah.
like, yes, we are all one. We're all a part of we're all a part of the body. But what one body part experiences is a different perspective than what another body part experiences. And so it doesn't mean that the finger's experience is wrong. It doesn't mean that the toes experience is wrong. They're just different. They're just unique, right? So, it's like, I guess that's the way I kind of look at it, as when I hear that we are all one. It's like, okay, that's my third dimensional, self, kind of breaking it down in an analogy that can understand that, okay, I get that. We're all part of the body, but we all have a different, different perspective. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, and I love that. There's no one size fits all, there really isn't. And we're all here to experience different things and to have our own perceptions, our own beliefs. And like you said, what we believe today may be different. It could shift in 2 minutes, like based on
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
consciousness expanding. And that's
Right.
why when I share this podcast, it's like I look back to my first and second podcast and I'm like, man, I was a different person back then. But
Yes.
it's
I
just shows
feel
you how much you
that.
grow through that process.
Yeah, I've had my podcast since 2018, and it has just evolved so much. And I feel it 1,000%. It's like those early episodes, or even episodes from a year ago,
Yeah.
it's this continuous evolution. And the more that we can embrace that, I think, all the better, because we can, it can be like that human thing where we sort of feel that that we need to hold our convictions, we need to hold
Yes.
like, and that is like a virtue to be able to like stick
This is
to.
what I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, and I will not change it at any cost. And it's like, well, what to
What's the
what
purpose?
end?
Yeah, the purpose is for
Yeah,
us to expand and grow. And yeah,
right. And if you're given new information, why would you not want that to change your perception if it can
absolutely.
complete,
Yeah, and I think too, it's all based off of vibration and frequency. So, in those earlier podcasts, there are people, we're all waking up at different levels and different rates and different frequencies. And so there are people who are in resonance with,
Yes.
where we were back in 2018, and now where we are and where we'll be in 2024, so it's
Yes.
like, yeah, so it's all very fluid. And I think that's where I think I'm going, I think when I book, my guests, it's like, okay, I like the fluidity of it. And I like to see, okay, what's your perspective? What's my perspective? That's awesome. How can I expand and grow? And, so I think that's my intention with my show, is to just, I love to be able to share my perspective in this now moment, and then
Yeah.
also listen to others and then see, wow, I took some tidbits from that, and now I can see where I can really expand my consciousness in these areas. And I think, the more we do the inner work too, I know with me, when I started to look inward is when I really grew really quickly. And so I do think sometimes we need to look back at ourselves and say, if our external reality isn't changing, we need to look at our internal reality and see where can we shift here.
Yeah. Beautifully said.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, this was really nice, Kara. I really enjoyed this conversation with you. And is there anything else you'd like to add? How can people reach out to you if they want to learn more? They can tune into the Meditation Conversation podcast, but how can they reach out to you if they want to, maybe schedule or connect with you?
Yeah, thank you so much. And first of all, thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun. I've really loved this conversation. Um, and yeah, I have a website called karagoodwin.com. That's Kara with a K. And you can go right on my homepage, and there's a free meditation you can sign up for. It's a 10-minute meditation to just bring in more light. I have a couple of free things on there. And then if you want to develop a meditation practice, I have like a 21-day self-paced program.
Oh, I love
I
that.
have a community, a membership community where we get together and do live online meditations every week, and more things that go with that. I have a retreat coming up. I'm in Indiana. Where are you?
Idaho.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Oh, wonderful. I'm in Indiana, and I'm having a retreat in Indiana at the end of October.
Oh, it'll
So
be a
if any,
beautiful time in Indiana with
oh
the
yeah. So if
changing of the
anybody wants
leaves.
to, yes, right. And this is a beautiful spot. We've got there's a vortex, an energy vortex on the
Oh, I love
site, and
that.
yeah, and we had a retreat there. I do it with my friend who's a very powerful shaman. And last year we unexpectedly opened another vortex while we were there. We didn't go to the retreat going like, let's try to open a vortex, but
Yeah.
it like things, we were just sort of led to that. And what was fascinating is that it's a community that's there, and there was like one liaison that I was working with kind of in the background, just as, like who's in what room, and we need this, and da da da. But she wasn't really interacting with anybody else. And at the end, she was like, can I speak with your group? And I was like, absolutely. And she's like, we really wanted to thank you for coming, because this was last year, like September. So COVID had just been a big deal, and a lot of things have been closed down. She's like, we've
Uh-huh.
had so many groups cancel, so it means so much that you guys are here, so, that you followed through, and we know what you've been doing, and we've been supporting you in the background, And
Amazing.
yeah, she's like, and we thank you, so much. And I'm like sitting there going like, well, I haven't talked to her. Like I didn't say anything. And then, but I assumed that my partner, Michael, the shaman must have talked to her at some point. And so I asked him, and I'm like, did you tell Dawn about the vortex? And he's like, I haven't talked to Dawn. And I'm like, how'd she know?
She's intuitive. She's highly intuitive. She's tapping in.
I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. That they would be picking up on that. So anyway, it's a really powerful site and a really powerful time, lots of activations. And
that's amazing. And that's just another aspect of our multidimensionality, the grid work, and us as, workers of the light or workers of the frequencies to be guided to these sites, to these vortexes, to activate ourselves and the land. And I love that. I did a podcast on that because there's a lot of pyramids here in North Idaho and Washington State. And, many of us are being guided to have our retreats and to have these moments where we're going to these sacred sites. And I love that. So if there's any of you out there who are feeling guided to go to Indiana, visit Kara's website and sign up. I know when I pulled up your website, the first thing that I saw was instilling the calm. And I was like, that just felt really good, because I know right now there's not a lot of calmness going on in the world. So if there's some of you out there who are having a hard time instilling the calm, you might want to visit Kara's website as well, because she's got some really good tools and techniques to help you get your central nervous system, to a point where it's a little bit more relaxed. And I know a lot with my clients right now, anxiety, depression, frustration. There's a lot of things that are coming up for people right now to be healed. And I think if we can share the tools and techniques that we've learned, to help others, then that's just as helpful, because they're things that we use to help us. So thank you so much, Kara, for coming on. I really enjoyed this. And I send everybody out there so much uplifting energy, and take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
You deserve to navigate your life as an empath in alignment with health, happiness, and abundance. To learn more about the services that I provide, including Beyond Quantum Healing Hypnosis, EFT tapping, and the Emotion Code, visit my website at www.thesoulcafe.org.